All right, James, welcome to my lounge.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's good to have you here. Let's start right out. You had band practice this morning.
I did.
You're in high school.
I am in high school. Ames High.
Ames High, okay.
Best concert band
Best
in
concert,
the state.
Best concert band in the state. Whoa, throwing that down.
Yeah. Really good group.
Why is that? Why are you the best concert band in the state?
We have the most all-staters out of anybody, so technically we are, but even beyond that, we're just the best. So
All right.
I want everyone to know that.
All right, I love your confidence. So let's start with, you've grown up in this paradigm, this set of patterns of doing church your whole life. Why do you feel at your age, why it's important for you as a third generation, why is it important for you to own this paradigm, this set of patterns? Why is it important for you to own your faith in this set of patterns? Why not just focus on having a good time, living life to the fullest right now at your age? Why is it important for the third generation to own this paradigm?
I think it's easier to illustrate why it's important to say what would happen if we didn't take it seriously. If any third generation of people set in an idea don't take it seriously, it almost always transitions into some weird, deformed version of what it was, as people lose the core understanding of what makes the idea, what patterns characterize the paradigm. If the third generation doesn't take ownership of that and become their own person in the context of the mission and the way of Christ and his apostles, the mission will falter and fizzle out, and conflict will tear the church apart, as people don't have the vision of how to develop their own personal lives in the context of the greater ministry.
Okay. So what have you done to help yourself and others make sure that they own it in the third generation? Or even beyond the third generation? But so that sounds really good, but what have you, it sounds like you're owning it individually, but what have you done to make sure that you own it? What have you done to make sure other people own it?
Leaders always hammer home the point of doing your own work, working through the first principles and working through the new series of Mastering the Scriptures. I mean, they're all very focused around you putting down your ideas, putting on your own thoughts, and sharing them in a Socratic discussion. So that's the most tangible one. And then developing an understanding of everyone. Everyone has to develop an understanding of themselves before they can develop an understanding of others and how to move in the world. So working through resources like identifying, becoming, through courses like the Apprenticeship Academy. A couple guys here with me have gone through that, and it's a really beneficial resource to understand yourself, and then also life to the nth, planning out your life, and using the resources like First Principles and Mastering the Scriptures to plan out your own development and your own role as a third generation member, taking the baton from the second generation and first generation.
Okay. So you've worked through a lot of resources. You've done your own work. That's been part of your answers. You've done your own work. You've taken that seriously. You and I, but particularly even wider audience. Let's talk about our Sunday equipping time. Because a few months ago, I had a conversation with
You did.
I had a conversation with you, and you're just like, man, I don't need nothing. I don't need none of that equipping time from Sunday mornings.
I didn't say that.
Well, that's what I heard.
Okay.
That's what I heard. You can correct me, but this is my version of it. You said to me, I said, how come you're not there? And when you are there, you're just sitting up in the balcony, just not kind of, it looks like you're not paying attention. And your response to me was, yeah, I don't really need it. It doesn't really help me. It doesn't really benefit me. But that's not your opinion today. So give me your version of what more of the truth sounds like, and then tell me where you're sitting today, what you've learned, and why you're in a different position on that than you once were. Bring us on that journey.
Yeah.
Tell us that story.
What you said was actually a pretty accurate representation.
Well,
of,
you just
of-
said it
of
wasn't
what I thought.
accurate.
Okay, well, what you said initially, and then you amended it with a longer version that is actually closer to the truth.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't think I just didn't see the value in it because it's not very individually oriented, and how I learn best is through conversation. And it wasn't a conversation, and I had to realize, or it is a conversation, but it's a conversation with 60 others. It's not going to be as immediately beneficial for me as an individual, but that's not the point. The point is to equip leaders in a much broader sense to go out and do the work of Christ, following the way of Christ and his apostles in their own churches. And even Isaac, who was a guest on this podcast as well, he pointed out to me that if I want to be a leader, this is something that I have to find a way to make work for myself. I have to be there. I have to be setting the example for the younger generation. I have to be doing my own work, and I have to, even if I'm not motivated to do it, even if it's not as directly beneficial to me in my own personal development as something like going through first principles with a mentor would. It's a different way of still achieving the same end of taking control of my own life and developing my own understanding of the paradigm and helping to lead others in the third generation.
Yeah. Okay.
In the way of the paradigm, it's kind of required doing that. I have to be there. I have to be there to be it's a core part of my development.
It sounds like you're saying a piece of what you're saying is you have to make use of every opportunity you have.
Yeah, cultivate your opportunities.
Cultivate your opportunities. Okay. And for us, in our particular network, we use Sunday mornings as an equipping time for all leaders.
Yep.
It's not a church. It's not a church gathering. It's a gathering of.
It's not a service either. It's
not a service, but it is very much a very high level of equipping time. Because you could even say it's not important for a guy your age or a gal your age to be there, but you've really, Isaac and others in your third generation have really come together and said, this is an important time. So that's James, that has been so encouraging to have you do that. You've mentioned the word paradigm a couple different times. What is a paradigm? How would you define a paradigm?
Technical definition, it's very analogous to worldview.
Okay.
In the way you see things, what you order your life around, a set of ideas that you choose to see the world through, worldview, and that worldview then causing you to act on it. Okay,
so that's a paradigm. How you view the world and acting upon the way you view the world. Okay. So then what is you grew up in this church.
I did.
You're third generation, and again, literally, because some people come in and they're my age and they're second generation as far as, but they're not second generation as far as their parents aren't necessarily part. But you're third generation, and how would you say how would you define and explain? How would you explain to someone what is the paradigm of the way of Christ and His apostles?
The paradigm of the way of Christ and His apostles is an understanding that church is truly a family, and in being a family, all of the services that churches typically outsource to outside entities like shepherding and counseling, development in the faith, and a much more long-term vision development, and not just a vision development, then you send them out into the world and they'll go figure it out. A vision development for every individual, rooting them in a deep understanding of the scripture, having them do their own work, regardless of what generation they're in, regardless of their giftings. Everyone needs to be developing in the understanding of the biblical text, which then we believe leads into the way we have our church gatherings formatted.
How are our church gatherings formatted?
Our church gatherings are formatted as a gathering. It's a small collection of people around a meal who are sharing in fellowship, and everyone needs to eat. So bonding around that, and it's a much easier thing to invite somebody over to your house for a celebration of something of, we believe, the celebration of Christ's death and sacrifice on our behalf. It's much easier to invite somebody over for a meal and for game time or for sharing in fellowship than it is to invite them to a Sunday morning service where they get something recited to them and then they go off in the world and they're separate from church for a while, then come back and get that same thing again. But having that being rooted in the homes, the genuine community found in the homes, that can only really be found in the home, of opening that up and having people come in and share in very, very personal aspects of your life.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Because I think a lot of people are always asking, what is the way of Christ and his apostles? It sounds like maybe a cliche, or maybe it is there a way? A lot of people might say there is not a way. Everyone just needs to be more like Jesus. We don't, is the patterns of Acts really just describing what happened, or is it actually giving us prescribing? Is it giving us a prescription for how we need to fulfill the Great Commission?
Mm-hmm. And that's the symptom of kind of the postmodern understanding of that there is no truth, there is no right way to do things. You say that we can't be sure that there is a way to do church. Western denominations are very fractured, but that's just a symptom of postmodernism. It's not a true biblical understanding of objective truth and objective. There's a right way to do things. There's a right way to live, and that right way to live is being rooted and built up in your communities.
Yeah, I love how you're tying it into postmodernism, because everything is relative, right? In postmodernism, it's your truth can be your truth, my truth can be my truth, which is not truth then.
Mm-hmm. It's a misnomer. Truth has to be something. It can't be everything, because if it's everything, then it's nothing.
That's right. So I love how you're seeing it through the cultural influence of our world today, because so many people are if you don't tie yourself to the scriptures first, before you start doing theology and decisions in culture, then you're going to be pulled off course pretty easily. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be tied ultimately to the truth, the wisdom, the teachings, the gospel that's embedded in the text. So with that said, you also have a folio. But you do a lot of stuff electronically.
I do.
So tell us why. I mean, we're in a technological society, but tell us what you're doing electronically. What work are you tying yourself to Scripture regularly with, and what does it look like?
I've got some of from our global summit here recently. I've got some of the papers that were passed around. This one is a gathering. Let's pull it out. This one is gatherings that are church today, patterned after Acts. Patterned after Acts being one of the biggest things that we're trying to push. One of the core aspects of the paradigm is patterned after Acts. And I have the First Principles book that I've been working through. Just got this from Isaac in the group that was teaching one of my friends how to play guitar. It's all very connected, all very personal. We meet in homes and go over these resources together and sharing in life, teaching instruments, talking about whatever, but also getting meaningful individual work done and rooting ourselves in an understanding of biblical principles and biblical truth through these resources.
Okay. So in the last week, 2 weeks, what's the biggest thing you're learning right now, or impact that you'd say is helping you root the faith deeper and deeper? Just one thing that comes to mind.
One thing that comes to mind, and something I've been thinking about a lot recently, is how to live as a Christian in culture, and how to do theology in culture. Essentially, it's a very broad set of ideas and kind of cultural or biblical hermeneutics in a cultural context. And how do you think about things like hot button topics in culture? How do you be a Christian in culture? Because a Christian has to be, and as Paul said, I'll be a Jew to a Jew, you have to be on someone's level to connect with them, to be culturally relevant enough that you can communicate with somebody. But you have to have a transformed life, and you have to live a life transformed by God. But also you have to be able to communicate and bring people in and be culturally relevant. So figuring out how to think about the vast gray area of how to move in culture, and developing your own personal convictions through conversations with mentors and people that are older and wiser than you. But developing that understanding and that true confidence to live and move in the world as a Christian, transformed by an understanding of the biblical objective truth and the proper way to live, but also connecting with people who are outside of the paradigm and the truth by being a person who is involved in culture, invested in their local community, seeking the welfare of the city. And to do that, you have to build up the cultural vocabulary.
So that's solid. That is solid. The thing you mentioned there is that the gray area. It's so much so that when we talk about gray area, 0 to 12, you're essentially learning rules of life. 0 to 6, 6 to 12, you're essentially learning there's authority and there's healthy authority in this world that keeps us safe, that helps guide us. There's rules of this world, and it's pretty black and white. But you're 18, 17, 18. You're 12 to 17, 12 to 18 now, so you're in that third stage, and everything, you're beginning to think in terms of principles now, and beginning to think in terms of the complexity that's actually in our world. It's a very complex world, but yet we can make sense of it. And so for us to hear how you're dealing with trying to figure out that gray, trying to figure out that complexity, tie yourself to Scripture. That's the only way you're going to be able to make sense of the world, is to tie yourself to the Bible's truths, the Bible's principles. That's really encouraging, James. It's really encouraging to hear you say that. So as we end here, how are you specifically, what are some of your life habits that you're doing in order to try to figure out how to do theology and culture, how to figure out how to live a transformed life in a culture that is full of different messages and still be relevant?
I think engaging with, first tying yourself to Scripture through doing things like the first principles and reading the resources provided to us by our leaders and connecting with leaders. First, making sure that you are firmly rooted in the way of Christ and His apostles and an understanding of biblical truth, and then engaging with art, and even terrible art, because art cannot be subjective. There are some things that are more beautiful than others, but even not burying your head in the sand, but engaging with terrible art that is very popular amongst our generation of, a kind of much more, simplified and stupid art. Being able to understand that, and then also have a much broader understanding of how art shapes culture. And that's one of the most important things to become culturally relevant is, as I said, a huge part of culture is art. So understanding what it is, you don't have to enjoy it, but having that understanding is so much of what connects people together in a culture, is their shared art, sports, all these things that kind of bond people together. So being able to be fluent in that, and then just that fluency is huge.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think I could ask you 10 more questions about that. We could have a long, long conversation about that, because it's a journey. For my own self, knowing how to live wisely in a complex world is a journey all of us are on. That journey never stops. We're all on that. We're all on that together. You're growing into a strong man. I love it, James. Let's keep pressing on. So until you're with me next time, press on.
Press on.